Hi, I'm Rigger. This is Your Right, and today we are looking over the Rwby Volume 9 trailer. It just dropped, I just watched it, so I thought I'd share my thoughts. It's not really worth trying to react anyway to like a minute trailer, so let's just go over the details. So, obviously we've dropped into Wonderland. It's pretty interesting, it's quite trippy, very traditional in that Wonderland feel, but there are a few things really worth talking about. First of all, I just have to love the character piece of Weiss saying, we've dropped into a fairy tale, let's link it through logically. Just a complete contradiction, you can't do that. But I do like that approach. As I've talked about before, it definitely reflects what might happen when you drop into a fairy tale, people from our world or Remnant, trying to break it down logically, trying to understand the fantastical, because how else would you approach it? So it makes sense that would be their first port, trying to make sense of the world around them, and that could even be a decent introductory episode. We've already seen Rwby try and interact with Little, things like that, and how strange it will be for them. Which is going to be great for us as an audience, just taking us to somewhere completely new, and we learn along with the characters, so we don't have to play catch-up. I do hope we do a better job with it than early Rwby, where people sometimes struggled to catch onto the concepts, but they've learned a lot since then, and the episodes are a lot longer with a lot more detail, so hopefully that works out. Obviously, as we'd expect, it is full of Wonderland references, and at least to begin with, it seems we're keeping in line with what Little said, that he probably has never seen another human, because we do see, at least in the beginning, an abundance of animal characters. There's the mean grasshopper, there's this badger guy, there's all these mice. So it seems like even though there are humanoid characters, it seems like they might be quite separated to begin with, at least from all the beings down on the beach, off in castles and construction and villages like we've seen that these animals have probably never been close to. But we do have the Cheshire Cat, who, much like in the Wonderland story, seems to be almost all-powerful and all-knowing and sort of can break the rules, because we have what seems to be a logical conclusion that the tree is important, but we have the girl saying, we think the tree can get us home. And how do we get there? And the Cheshire Cat says, you don't. You don't get to the tree comes to you, unless you're me. So, the cat can break the rules, but it seems like it's more going to be a journey. That the tree is, even if you could walk up to the tree, it's less of a place you can go and more a destination for you to achieve mentally and with yourself to interact with the tree, assuming it's an all-powerful thing. Much like the Cheshire Cat, it seems like a lot of the opposition is going to be very on the nose for Alice in Wonderland. We have an obvious Queen of Hearts. There's a big heart on a chair. And it should be pretty interesting. I am curious how the chess is going to work, because as you can see when they're playing, it's some sort of chess game, or maybe not particularly chess, more like some kind of battle simulation, which is what chess is. And look, the girls are on the board. Did they get shrunk down, to be part of this battle and they escape? Because we can see that the board gets flipped. Is it an off with their heads thing and they flip the board to escape? Did the queen lose and flip the board in anger? Who knows? But what's even more interesting when it comes to threats is that so far it's remained consistent, and looking through the trailer I can't find evidence to the contrary, that Rwby doesn't have her weapon. The others do, but Rwby is without Crescent Rose, and I think it's going to be a decent story here. We have a close-up of this weapon here, and initially I thought it was the weapon that the guards were using on the chess scene. They're sort of like a halberd, but they are slightly different. And I thought, maybe she steals one from them, and maybe she does, and it's just the animation looks different, but I don't think so. Because we also have this smith character, this woman smithing. And a little side theory about her is I think that there's a chance that if she is human at all, she's mostly machine, because you can see all the parts, but maybe she's completely machine. Maybe she's like a clockwork person. Just like the cards, maybe she's like an assembled being. Who is, like a mechanical doll given life who's Smith. Maybe not, maybe they are losing body parts and replace them with mechanical bits. But I think there's a decent chance that this Smith is going to be the one to make a replacement weapon for Rwby, because when you look at this weapon, this axe, it is not just an axe, but it's also very reminiscent of Crescent Rose. It has, a curved blade at the top, and it has a barrel of a long gun for the handle, but it's obviously slightly different setup. But it could be the closest we could get from the smith. You know, you're not going to complain, you don't have any weapon, so that's as close as you can get. The other concept is maybe this is her weapon, and she never gets Crescent Rose back. It could be, I mean, I do think there's a decent chance that the mission is to get Crescent Rose back, but it could be she never gets it, because we also have this other plotline of who are you going to be in this vision where she's talking to herself, and this rings out to me because of the discussion with Little, where Little was asking her name, but it's also her name is what she is. You know, are you a Rwby? Or whatever he said along those lines. You know, finding your purpose. You know, your name is your purpose, it's what you are. And I think that this will come into play, and it could be that she creates a new weapon, a sort of new identity. It's similar to the old one, but it's her own mix on it, because the one she made initially was based on Crow's weapon, even though she made it herself, and, you know, she over-designed it. It could be that she makes a new weapon, a new identity for herself, because there's all this discussion about what if you could leave Ruby Rose behind? What if you could shed her like an old coat? And I wonder if that doesn't mean necessarily become a new person, but you could also interpret it as, what if you stayed here? What if the concept that was Ruby Rose, the huntress from Remnants, ceased to be and you continued to live here? That is another option I was thinking. You know, you leave that old life, it's all in another reality, it's gone. Like, if you can't get back, you can just stay. Or it could be crafting yourself a new identity, becoming a new person and returning. And I do think it's interesting she's talking to her former self. And this is sort of a brain tangent, so stick with me. But I think that in this scene here, where Ruby collapses, I do wonder if she's going to be plagued by visions, or possibly, in a sense, drugged, or magically drugged. Now, it could be because she is communicating with the tree, and it's part of her journey of self-discovery. It could be for other reasons, because I see this giant wall of smoke, and I think the caterpillar with the hookah. You know, that's very common, that's in Alice in Wonderland, and seeing visions and going on a vision quest. And also, with the big purple monster guy, who I am now convinced isn't a person, I thought maybe he might be a person, you know, painted up, but he moves very beastily, unless it's a real big twist and his hands are ghoulish for some other reason. But I thought that in the other trailer there's a bit where he moves very frame ratey, like he sort of leaves after images and blurs. But he doesn't move like that here, so that could be, again, Ruby seeing him and having one of these visions, or being drugged. And, you know, the drugs or the whatever it is, or the magic, takes her on these visions where she has to do self-discovery. Because we see images like Salem here, but that clearly is like a vision of some description. It doesn't look like actual Salem, and there's no reason Salem would be here. It might be visions of home, it might be memories, whatever. And also, people talking about seeing Summer Rose, that kind of thing. There is a decent chance that rather than her being here, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, you know, it's just a reach, that instead you see her through visions, through a mix of Ruby's memories, interpretations, and magic. Or maybe an actual vision of the past and what happened, maybe you see her in that way. So that could be a really interesting way to approach it. Another thing I wanted to point out is not to necessarily be tricked by the dialogue. Obviously I can't detect it, but there's a decent chance that what we're hearing is chopped up. There's the line, "You seem to be carrying a rather large burden behind you," and Ruby responds, "It's okay, I can handle it. What if I told you to leave Ruby Rose behind?" Now, there's a chance that the "you seem to be carrying a large burden with you" isn't said to her, because we do see it over a frame of Neo, and Neo disguises as her. So, it could be that this person talks to multiple people, and we're hearing a sort of chopped up version, or not. My point is, don't read too much into the dialogue, and also don't read into too much over who the dialogue is being said to, because it's impossible to know what's been chopped and changed in editing. But also we have things like this big flower. So I called it from the teaser image that it's a big flower, and it is. And I'm wondering if, because everyone's approaching it in like a reverent way, if there's a ceremony up there, something of that nature, perhaps to go to the top is an honor. Because Y seems to be at the top, but then something bad happens. So do they get attacked? Does something else happen? Because if it was me, what I'm thinking is, in my thoughts along the lines of the hookah-smoking caterpillar, I'm pretty sure he's usually depicted as being on a leaf, but you could move him to being in a flower, and then if it's some great vision quest or some honor to see him, to cross, and, that could be something. And then maybe she goes on this vision quest and then disappears, so Weiss is horrified. But again, we're just sort of throwing puzzle pieces together. But I do think it's very interesting also going back to this smith, because we had the weapon idea, but also what I wanted to point out for this whole thing is we don't see any Jaune at all. No Jaune whatsoever. And I think that could be really interesting and important. I think there's a decent chance Jaune doesn't show up for a while, that we spend several episodes without him, and he could come back changed. Because while I said there's a chance this smith or this forge makes stuff for Rwby, it could also be that they make stuff for Jaune, because we've seen that image of what is definitely Jaune in flames, and obviously, this character's in front of a flaming thing, even though the flames are slightly different. But it could be that they come across this smith, and in an act of rage, or revenge, or some other drive, they are fueled in anger, hence, the metaphorical flames, but this person crafts the rest of their armor to match, and reforges a blade for them. And that could be something to explore. And maybe that blade is full of hate now. I mean, maybe not, it could just be, normal, but then why show him in the burning flames? It has a darker tone to it. Speaking of a darker tone, we do have, Neo disguised as Rwby, and I really like that because, for the most part, we've only seen her do that to trick people into, thieving when she impersonated Nora, or when she disguised as a random citizen to attack. But we haven't seen her disguise as Rwby to just actually attack someone, and I'd be really down to see if that happens. But similarly, she might not have her weapon, because it was kicked off separately. So that means even more so you could mistake the two for each other. As long as there isn't a situation where she has to talk, you can see Rwby without a weapon and not know which one it is, and that's pretty interesting. Or it could be any other character, Jaune as well. Although she knows Rwby is down here from their mid-air falling fight, but whatever. Another quick point I'd like to point out that everyone will probably catch, but it seems like our first port of call for Yang is going to be getting her arm back, because even though you see her wrestle it back off that guard, that's not where she lost it. She said she lost it to the Badger guy. Well, it seems like he's running a game, or maybe you can buy things from him, so she's going to have to win it back. So that's an interesting little, side quest. And also we have what I assume is Little's village that has captured Weiss and Blake. So that could even be the reason they shrunk. I did talk about that before, that maybe they shrunk down to match the villages, that, that's why they're small later. That could be a thing. It's really hard to tell, but these are interesting to think about, because it seems like the animals are probably going to be the way people meet up. So perhaps Yang gets her arm stolen by this guy and follows him to the village, and then the mice capture Weiss and Blake, and they don't know what to do with them, so they take them to the village, who are these outsiders, and Little leads Rwby to the group back to his village. So therefore you have all the girls meet up. Something along those lines. Another thing I wanted to point out is I don't know the time span of this, but I think it's interesting that in the past, a lot of the time the trailers have been compiled of stuff from sometimes just the first episode, or sometimes it's the first 3, because a lot of the time the stuff isn't finished, so you can't pull stuff from later in the episode, and also you give less away. But here I'm not sure if that's the case, because the volume I assume is completely done, and that means that they could have pulled from anywhere, but a lot of this seems to go together, so I don't know how much story we're actually covering, and we don't know if we're going to jump back and forth to Remnant and things like that. As far as just little side notes, there's a few. Everyone's been talking about Blake and Yang, and Blake does blush here, so yeah, maybe that could be that. I don't know where Yang is going here, but it seems like there is something she's trying to get to, some tower, but I'm wondering if it's a leap of faith. Perhaps you have to step off. That could be something. Also, this dog running through. In Alice in Wonderland, there is usually a dog that helps, and also there's someone riding that dog. You can see the foot. Also, we have a clash with the red and white pieces. So here we have white chess pieces, which makes me wonder who the White Queen is. I don't think it's going to be this Forge lady. Maybe it is. I did also think it's interesting how segmented the biomes are here. I said initially it sort of looked like Fairy Tale Minecraft, how there's hard lines that split everything. But it does definitely give that otherworldly feel. As for getting home, it feels pretty assured that we will. I mean, we will. Well, the story has to continue, but I do sort of wonder... People have talked about this maybe being almost filler, almost like a side quest, and I do wonder what we're going to gain from it, because I still don't see how, you know, if the answer is, oh, it's a weapon that can harm Salem, that doesn't make any sense. Salem can't be killed. That's the whole point of her. You know, if you can permanently kill her, it takes away the point. It's supposed to be the lesson learned, or it feels like. If we gain knowledge, that could be something. People thought about gaining relics, maybe. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to mention. The globe. It being a relic. I don't understand the idea people have that it's a relic. Now, I understand by looking at it. It's gold and it glows blue. That says relic, and I thought that too. But it's not ornate enough in design to match our relics, but maybe it's a different, you know, it's a different land, so maybe it's created differently. But I struggle to understand why there would be a relic here, when the whole point of the relics was to help, you know, the failed experiment that was Remnant bring itself together. And why would there be need for more relics here? And if there is, it's very curious that they decided to do the same experiment over. Now, it wouldn't make sense with all these, you know, disparate people that they also have a mission to come together as one. You know, all the animal people and whatever a purple guy is and whoever the red queen is, all these things. It would make sense, but I guess it doesn't speak well to the gods. Not that they've ever looked good, that they may have made the same mistake twice. But if it is a relic, it's a very easy find. I don't know why it's just sitting there, although whoever owns it might fight for it. Outside of that, I can't think of much else. Except it seems like this grasshopper man might have trapped them, because you can see he's holding, like, a big rope. So maybe he drew them in while he was in the pile of leaves and then pulled the rope and captured someone. So that could be a decent story. The only other thing I can think to talk about is that we knew Penny would get brought up. Obviously, there are references to her, and it's going to be a hurdle. I don't know why everyone was so obsessed with the idea that Ruby's going to, you know, blame Jaune for what he did. It seemed like that isn't in line with what she would do, unless she is on this soul-searching journey, and that is something she has to come to terms with. People have talked about her buried emotions for a long time, and we'll see if that's the case, and it certainly may be. But I do think it's interesting, and I do want to see how the relationship changed coming out of Wonderland, but that's the kind of thing we won't know till we get there. The last thing to talk about is the announcement. You know, we have a date, so February 18th. That's a lot sooner than I thought it would be, but, you know, it's good for everyone who was really anticipating it. And the other thing is that it's purely on Crunchyroll now. So I don't know any of the details. I think this might make things difficult for reactors, but we'll see. Anyway, I think that's the end of it. This was the trailer. Are you excited? What are your thoughts? Let me know. Did I miss anything? I probably did. Anyway, until next time, my name is Rigger. Hope you have a wonderful day. And I hope I did alright.